After the way you love me, keeping me up 2 cups of coffee. Baby, you make me feel so lovely. I keep on running, no, I should've wanted a high. I keep on falling right into your thought, I can't get you off my mind. So sweet, yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I want is sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy. Sweet, yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I want is sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy. Oh, what a rush each time you catch me. Chasing after the way you love me. Color my life up like confetti. Baby, you make me feel so lovely. I keep on running, no, I should've wanted a high. I keep on falling right into your thought, I can't get you off my mind. So sweet, yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I want is sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy. Sweet, yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I want is sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy. Sweet, yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I want is sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy. Sweet, yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I want is sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy. Nothing out there could ever stop me. From chasing after the way you love me. Keeping me up 2 cups of coffee. Baby, you make me feel so lovely. So sweet, yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I want is sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy. Sweet, yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I want is sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy. Sweet, yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I want is sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy. Sweet, yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I want is sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy.
Right.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Ken McElroy Show. I'm your host Danille here with Ken.
Hey guys, what's going on?
And so today we have a really interesting episode. We are going to be talking about when unemployment ends.
Yeah.
So, but before we jump into that, let's chat about this weekend, kind of what we did this weekend. So we're in Manhattan Beach. We're loving Manhattan Beach, California. And we took the bikes out this weekend.
Yeah, as you guys know, it's really hot in Arizona, and but we had Jerry and Jake in town, and we were doing videos last week to keep supporting the channel, and so that was fun. And then yeah, we've been riding our bikes all around and getting some exercise. I went for a run this morning, and along the ocean.
Well, it's nice to be here because Phoenix is hot.
Yep.
So, but anyways, so today we're going to be talking about when unemployment ends and what, some things we can expect once it ends. If you're dealing with unemployment, if you're on unemployment, we'd love to hear from you. And also, please hit the like button. It really helps us out. It really shows us that you're appreciating the content. And so let's dive in. And I almost forgot. I want to give a shout out to a comment we had last week on our YouTube on Friday. Bold Guy, I love this comment. He said he got a discount on a rental property, down $25,000 because bad tenants, the owner was dealing with bad tenants. So he was able to negotiate a deal based on that. But then he did cash for keys, $2,000, which got him out. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty interesting, a very good strategy there by Bold Guy.
Yeah, smart, very smart. That's, buying properties like that where landlords or, people that own real estate, they're having bad experience. What they don't realize is that that's a real common thing, and it doesn't have to be a common thing. In fact, I think that most tenant issues are a result of the person who put those people in there. They're, just like in life, you're going to have people that pay and don't pay, and I think that he saw a great opportunity. Obviously, got a discount on the real estate itself, and congratulations.
Well, and it was cool too, because it's kind of what you did. One of your properties that you're buying currently is the owner was behind. Obviously, it was a multifamily. Owner was behind because of tenants, and you guys are, able to get it at a good price.
Well, it kind of dovetails right into our conversation today. There are lots of people that don't pay, and for whatever reason, and on the properties that we're buying, they're bigger properties. We're seeing $200,000-$300,000 in delinquent rents on some of these bigger properties, and it just is what it is. And so it is a reduction on the income, and so you very well could be getting reductions in the price if somebody's trying to sell their property with call it toxic management, toxic tenants, whatever you want to call it, where they're not getting the income, but they still have the expenses. They could be in a situation where they have to unload that to somebody else who maybe has some reserves and has some cash, and maybe they just want to get out of it and be done with it. So, it's a great time to potentially look for some of these properties that the landlords are having a tough time with them right now.
Definitely. And we're getting a lot of comments on your shirt because Ken was a C student, so he loves to rock that shirt. We were actually at lunch the other day, and some guy's like, "You look like an A student to me." Like, he clearly didn't know Ken. So, but anyways, Renstu said he was a D student, so he feels like we should make a D student shirt.
This is an upgrade from when I went to school.
So anyways, so let's start by jumping in. Thank you guys for checking it out. We always enjoy you guys watching these. So we want to clarify. So I think that there's unemployment is continuing on the state level. So whatever that level is, I know in Arizona it's like $200 a week or something. But there's two things that are dropping on September 4th, and it's going to be the benefits, the additional $300 benefits are dropping. But so are the benefits for like self-employed and gig workers that didn't qualify for traditional unemployment.
Yeah. So there's a few things. One, there's actually three programs. There's the first one, which is called the PUA, which is the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. Right now, as of the end of last month, there were 4.8 million people on that program. That's gone as of, I think, September 6th. Then there's the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Comp, or the PEUC. There's 3.8 million people on that. And then there's also the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Comp, or the FPUC. So now, obviously, the key word being pandemic.
Yeah.
So all of those things came out. They were additions to the original unemployment piece for, at the federal level. And those are all going to be gone here in a week.
Yeah. And I think, let me know, guys, if you know this, but I'm pretty sure it ends September 4th. So I think the checks will last one additional week. I think that's how that works. But, we're not, experts on unemployment. So if you are, then write it down in the notes so we know.
And I think the whole point of bringing that up is, there's over 10 million people unemployed right now, and there's a labor shortage. So we have these two things happening at the same time.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Biden's having a rough week right now.
Yes,
rough month. Between Afghanistan, COVID, unemployment running out, and then the eviction moratorium being lifted, which we talked about on our Friday Live.
And inflation.
Yeah. Yes, and inflation.
So Biden's he's got his back against the wall. He's got a lot of big issues certainly not all of them were his, but they're all his now. So, but I think the issue that I personally am glad that, it's hopefully going to push more people back into the labor market. The labor market's a mess right now. It's, in a lot of cases, a lot of people are like, why would I, go work a low pay job when I'm getting money from the federal and the state government?
Plus, I also think they're working some side hustles and making some additional money above that. And I don't know, I mean, you can't necessarily blame them.
No, guys. Like, listen, it's, there's all kinds of people who bash these programs. These programs were necessary. We sent everyone home, and they, what they did though was they kind of underpinned the go back to work piece. So, I have a lot of friends that had, let's say anything under $20 an hour. There was no real incentive for the employee to go back to work because what they were getting after tax was very similar to what they were getting if they weren't working.
Exactly. Definitely.
So that's really the issue.
Yeah. So as all of these, the unemployment starts to run out, you are going to see people filling these open positions, we believe.
Yeah, and if you're on the side that's been getting that assistance, there are lots of things I think that you can do. Obviously, you need to really take a look at your spending because, there are things that you probably need to do or should do right now. The other thing that you can do is if you've racked up any kind of credit card balances, and if I were you, I would take a look at consolidating any kind of balances that you might have to a zero interest or low interest type credit card. So you can take your credit card balances because what you want to lower that payment. It won't change the principal, but it'll lower the payment, and that might not be a lot, but it might be. But this is a time for you to hunker down and actually create some cash reserves, some savings if you can.
Yeah, and we actually have a handout on this, kenmcelroy.com/expenses. Ken put this together. It's all about how to budget your income and minimize your debt. So if you're somebody that's in a lot of debt or that's going to be getting off unemployment, please check it out, kenmcelroy.com/expenses.
The one thing that I think is interesting is some people might not realize is there are taxes due for the money that you've gotten, the federal money and in a lot of cases the state money.
Are you sure that they didn't waive that? Okay.
Yeah. There is a piece that Biden proposed. I think it was 10,200. So there's a tax piece that's certainly buffered, but then over that, I think that you're going to have some income tax due.
Yeah, definitely. So I think now that the unemployment is running out, we're going to see what we should have seen when all of this started.
Yeah.
So it's going to be more traditional in 2008 in the fashion that people are going to start moving home and people are going to start moving in together. So we're trying to cut back on their rent expenses. So if they're on unemployment now, they're about to get off, they're figuring out what they need to do.
Yeah. So I went through this in 2008. And in 2008, what happens is once that income stops, then people start to figure it out, like it becomes real.
Yeah.
And I think in September, you're going to start to see a lot of people roommate up. They're going to go to work. I think you hopefully will start to see some of these over 10 million people unemployed. Hopefully that'll go down. I think that's what the government's trying to do here. Is it's weird that we have a labor shortage and 10.1 million people on unemployment. And I personally think that number might be even higher.
Yeah.
So, so hopefully we'll start to see that. I don't know about you guys, but the restaurants and a lot of the folks that are, kind of in the hospitality industry are having a heck of a time finding people, retaining people, and they've had to do all kinds of incentives just to get people to come interview and even to stay. Even had to pay higher wages in a lot of cases, and a lot of businesses obviously have closed permanently, but even more have closed during the week. So
yeah, we're seeing that a lot in
yeah.
Manhattan where we're at. We walk down the road. I want to go to the juice bar. They're only open on the weekends because they don't have any staff.
Yeah. So, so what they're doing is they're closing on, say, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. We're seeing a lot of restaurants. And by the way, we've been in Arizona, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, and now California, all in the last 2 months. And this is kind of a consistent thing that we're seeing, when we're walking down the road. There are restaurants like even Starbucks here in Manhattan Beach is closed on certain days, and that's a big brand.
Yeah, they're closed a lot in the evenings.
Yeah, they're closed. And so what the employers are doing, or the people that are running these franchises or businesses, is they're collapsing their hours. They're trying to figure out, when they need to be open based on matching it with the people that will work. So things are really disrupted. And what I'm hoping is with this, unemployment benefits that stop, hopefully, that'll give a boost to some of these small businesses that, are trying to get through this time.
Definitely. And I think that you're going to see that. And I think it's also creating issues in supply chains, which is affecting inflation. So I think both parties agree people need to get back to work, even if they necessarily don't want to say it. But it's going to be painful for a lot of people because the wages that they're going to may be less than or the same as the wages they've been getting. But I think with the wages they've been getting with unemployment, a lot of people were working a secondary job and doing stuff to even get more income. They weren't having to pay for daycare. There's things that they were doing that even if they make the same amount of money is going to be less. And I think within this, they're going to feel inflation more than they normally have. Their daycare may have went up, things like that.
Yeah. So as you guys know, I think, I just filled up my car the other day. It was $4.99 per gallon. And so basically $5 a gallon. And we're starting to see food go up. We're starting to see labor go up. We're starting to see things that you would normally have day to day. I know for sure there's a number of businesses that have come out publicly and said that they're going to have to raise their prices because of, all of these things. And so the federal government keeps saying that inflation is transitory. And I think you could do that for the first month or two or three. But now, obviously, we're seeing, I think we're seeing inflation here for a while. And this has a lot to do with the money that we put into the economy through the stimulus. I'm not saying we didn't need it, but when you inject that much money to the money supply and it starts to circulate, you guys might want to take a look at stagflation potentially, because I think what the government's really looking at is they're trying to prevent hyperinflation. So I was on a Zoom yesterday with George Gammon. And if you guys haven't seen George Gammon, you should go look at his channel. He talks a lot about this kind of stuff. And I was also chatting with Robert Kiyosaki about this exact same thing. Because I think that the federal government or the Federal Reserve has two big issues. And I think that they're in a debt trap. So what does that mean? So a debt trap means that they can't necessarily increase interest rates because that's number one. So if they increase interest rates, then that slows down the economy. It slows down the purchasing of vehicles. It slows down the purchasing of anything that's attached to an interest rate. So you have that. On the other side of it, they can't really slow down the stimulus. In other words, they have to keep pumping money into the economy. So that's what we're calling a debt trap. And so stagflation, the definition, one of the definitions of stagflation is high unemployment and high inflation. And so those are two things that we have right now. We have high unemployment of 10.1 million people, and we're now obviously in the 4 or 5% inflation. So all of that, to your point, people are going to now have less money, and all of a sudden those higher prices are going to become more and more of an issue.
Yeah, especially for your middle class and your lower class people.
Yeah.
And Delta D says, but transitory has changed in meaning that inflation is rising, but the prices that rose is never to fall. So I think that's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're not seeing as much inflation, but lumber went up, 200% and it stayed there, but it hasn't went up any more than that. So
well,
I think,
yeah. So I think, when it first came out, the first couple of months, they called it transitory, basically giving people hope that it might go down. So, and when it hasn't gone down yet, and hopefully it does, but now they're saying that it's stuck there. It's very possible that it isn't stuck there. And now there are lots of reasons. We do have supply chain issues,
but that's partially because people aren't working.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's definitely. And then we also have this Delta variant, which is potentially going to slow things down again. We're already seeing economies like New South Wales and Australia completely locked down. And we're starting to see, this Delta variant spike. And we are starting to see a lot of political pressure around that. And so this whole thing could get hit again.
Exactly. And 10 plus says people don't know what's coming for them in the next 2 to 3 years. People are going to be hurting, and the government is going to have to put up a boogeyman to blame. So that probably is true. People are going to be hurting in the next 2 to 3 years with inflation for sure, if they don't have, assets that move with inflation.
Yeah, and that's kind of the whole point of this channel, guys, is not necessarily to blame anybody, but just to understand what's happening and to be on the right side of it. So as you guys know, we've been talking about side hustles. We've been talking about having inflation adjusted assets like debt. That's why Ross and I and our whole company is kind of behind getting more debt, fixed rate debt, not credit card debt, but things we believe are going to go up. And so if you have a fixed rate debt that's hedged, so in other words, the principal amount is set and the fixed rate interest is set, that's going to be more and more valuable to you as the asset goes up and that debt remains the same. You'll actually be growing your equity. So on a number of levels.
Yeah, definitely. And Chris brought up something really interesting on YouTube. He's a business owner in California, and he is having trouble finding quality workers. And we've definitely noticed that worker quality is going down. Like, we've noticed that eating at restaurants, everything else. But we know these business owners are desperate to hire people. But what he's curious about is he's been to Texas and Florida and Arizona, same recently. And these states have all ended the extended benefits, and they're still having labor issues. So that is interesting. And we have discussed that, with our friends and different things. So why do you think that is?
Well, I think that there's a lot of people that also have gotten some excess cash. I know my son, who's 20 years old, some of his friends got $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 of that PPP money. And they got some big chunks of money. So I think
and they were just like part-time college workers.
Yeah. So I think that people, if you look at savings rates right now, I think people have more savings than they have. And so they're probably evaluating their options.
Yeah, I think, Chris, a few things. I agree with you. They're evaluating their options. not everybody budgets like everybody else does. So sometimes when people have money in the bank and they're still getting their state unemployment, they're kind of like, I could ride this out for like another year like this and not have to work, because like I said, not everybody budgets and values having savings like some of us do. And then another thing is there's been a lot of lawsuits in those states. And I think people are also kind of waiting for that payout, right? Where if it gets overturned and they worked, they wouldn't get that money. And then thirdly, a lot of them have been living rent free. I mean, the eviction moratorium just ended the other day. So, and it could be months before these people have to pay rent. So I think all of that kind of goes into why these jobs potentially aren't being filled yet.
Right. And so what I think is going to happen is I think there's going to be another run toward affordability. So a lot of people are going to start looking at options for cheaper rent, and how can they reduce their monthly expense and, still, not have to be too committed potentially.
Yeah. Yeah. When I think a lot of these people, getting evicted are going to be looking at not understanding what the rental market is like. And I also think people that have been in their units where their landlord has not raised their rent last year because of the moratorium are going to be surprised, at what the new rental rates are. So that's going to put another stress on people and their work and their jobs.
Yeah. We just did a video on this. I firmly believe that we're going to see pretty aggressive rent growth. And, if you take a look at the last 2 years, the landlords have gotten kind of beat up from a standpoint of occupancy and rent growth and all that. And they haven't, we've been struggling obviously just to even get money collected. And, now I think you're going to start to see, especially from the fallout from the eviction moratorium, but also from the forbearance, that there's going to be more pressure on the rental side of the house. And so we only have so much supply. And now all of a sudden you have a big demand increase. It's my belief that you're going to start to see a pretty aggressive rent growth in many, many markets. And so the renters are going to have to figure that out, because I know in some cases we're seeing $500 to $1,000 a month rent increases.
Right, which is huge
already. And, home ownership has gone from, let's say, in the high 60s all the way down to about 64 to 65% right now. And it's my belief that it's going to go even further down into potentially below 60. And so home ownership in the United States in the next few years, in my opinion, is going to be for the first time less than 60%. And what that's going to do is it's going to put a tremendous amount of pressure on rentals, on existing rental stock. And that's going to drive the rent rates up dramatically.
And I want to take Eddie's question or statement on YouTube. He said that we're blaming the unemployment on people not wanting to work. And that's actually not true. I don't blame people for not taking a job that pays the same or less than their unemployment, because they're trying to look for a better job potentially, that pays more. But what we're saying is, once that additional benefit is cut and they're not making enough money to live on, they're going to have to take some of these lower wage jobs until they find something better. So right now people are kind of at home, like, until I find a really good job, I don't want to take it because I'm making this unemployment. But once, like Arizona's $200 a week, then they're going to have to maybe go take a service job that they don't really want to take in order to get that additional money for their family while they look for something better. So that's going to be the switch.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point. I think it doesn't really matter where the money's coming from. It could be coming from your parents. The point is, if somebody's giving you money and it's the same amount as if you go to work, then obviously you're not going to go to work. That's kind of the point. And so when that money stops, again, it doesn't really matter who it's coming from. Then all of a sudden, there's more pressure on that person to go out and figure out another way to make more money.
Exactly. And Bob from YouTube says he predicts a nation of self-employed side hustlers. And I actually agree with him. I think, some of the people that were making low wage jobs took this time and took the unemployment to find little side hustles that they could do to make the same income that they were making working at Starbucks, or the same income they were making waitressing. So I do agree that more people kind of jumped on that. And those people were really smart to take the time, where they had that money coming in to grow their own business, honestly.
Yeah. This very well could be the rise of the entrepreneur. I think there's a lot of people that are completely fine relying on somebody giving them money. And then there's a lot of people that don't feel like that is safe.
Yeah.
And so like myself, I like to produce what I like to produce and do what I want to do and not have to rely on someone else. But some people are the exact opposite. I have those people in my own family. So,
Yeah. No, a lot of people don't want the responsibility of having to hustle to get their own money. They would rather just show up and do a great job at work and call it a day.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There's just two types of people. But I do think that these unemployment benefits have gave people an opportunity, maybe, that we're working all the time, living paycheck to paycheck, to kind of do something different. Right. So I think that in a way that was cool. Void Bip said New York is going to extend the eviction moratorium to January 15th of next year.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so the point there is I know the CDC lost that battle with the Supreme Court 6-3, but to his point, there are states and cities that can impose at a local level that continuing, and obviously that will have ripple effects, for that particular economy. Definitely.
And Jacqueline said she went to Starbucks yesterday and they were closed because not enough employees. So she went to another Starbucks and they served her coffee in a white plastic styrofoam cup. So there's definitely some issues going on there. So let's see. So Patrick said he saw on a local site there was no Section 8 rentals available in parts of Florida. So let's talk about that, because you think they're going to kind of extend and potentially open up more Section 8 housing.
Well, I do think that the government's going to have to get involved. I don't agree with it, but they're going to want to get involved on imposing restrictions on landlords for things like maybe some assistance around rent, potentially rental increases, which really is just a form of rent control. There's going to be all kinds of stuff that's going to be proposed, in my opinion, over the next few years. We're out in Manhattan Beach right now. We went to Venice, California the other day. I bought an old renovated Bronco, and from a guy that knows how to do them in Venice. And so we were walking around Venice, and there's a pilot program for the UBI, or Universal Basic Income, that they rolled out, and it's $1,000, $500 to $1,000, no questions asked, and no strings attached. So you're gonna start to see money being thrown at places to try to clean up some of the displaced, the homelessness and some other things, because not everyone's going to just jump out and go get a job, and so there's going to have to be some gap money in there, I think, and that's just the beginning. I think there's other cities, states, counties that are going to have to come up with their individual programs based on what's happening in those particular areas.
Yes, definitely. And we don't think Section 8 is necessarily a bad thing, or taking government money for tenants is necessarily a bad thing.
And I guess I really didn't even answer the question. I feel strongly that Section 8 does work. And, there's a couple of reasons why. I've dealt with Section 8. We've had Section 8 tenants in our properties. And there's nothing wrong with Section 8. Section 8 was originally, that program has been around a long time. I don't know if it's been around quite 100 years, but it's been around a long time. And so when a program's been around that long, there's a reason. And so, there are, just like anything, there are Section 8 tenants that are really, really, really amazing. And then there are others that abuse the program. However, there is a waiting list in most areas to get on Section 8. So if you need it, in addition to that, there's not that many landlords that actually accept it. And so if you're on Section 8, the last thing you want is to not be on Section 8, because and the landlord, it's actually good because it's guaranteed money from the government. And so some of my friends that own Section 8 properties are very happy because each and every month that money comes. Now, there are some restrictions around it too. And so I would imagine that the government's going to have to expand more programs out, like Section 8 or something else that's more assistance for the renter, and working more on what I would call a private-public partnership between the landlord and the tenant and the government to provide more money to people that need it.
Yeah, and we're getting a lot of comments in the comment section right now saying all these nightmare stories people have had with their tenants. And, those things can happen, but, ways to prevent getting a bad tenant. It's not foolproof, but is the credit and background check. If somebody has great credit and a clean background check, your odds are much better on them not wanting to destroy their credit and them, being a good tenant.
Yeah. So guys, like, even our company, as we run a criminal credit and sex offender check on every single person that moves in, just like you should. And, the tenant actually pays for that application to be run. You should be doing that for every single person that you put into your place. And, there are going to be people that abuse things. And, your job as a landlord or a property manager is to make sure that you can go into their background. People just aren't perfect and then destroy things. They typically have.
Wait, that needs to be a shirt. That really needs to be a shirt.
Like they have a history of doing this from property to property to property. So, there are red flags that, typically come up when you're screening people. And so I would just encourage you guys to take your time on the front end. If you have had these problems, dust that off as a learning experience. Know that there are plenty of good tenants out there that can rent your place. Trust me on that. But you have to take your time and make sure that if you spend all that money on cleaning a unit up, putting in the flooring, painting the place, advertising it, the last thing you want to do is just rent it to the next person that comes along. You want to rent it to the right person that can pay. And that truly is not that difficult. What happens is a landlord gets they get a little bit of anxiety about a vacancy, and they want to fill it quickly. So they shortcut all of those things, all that discipline that they need to do on the front end. And then that can be a very good experience if you put the right person in.
Yeah, and somebody commented, somebody on Section 8 probably won't have good credit. And two things, that's an unfair statement, because there's a lot of people on Section 8 that do have good credit. They just have low income. Low income and credit are very different things. But secondly, it's even if they have low credit, it's very, very, very hard to get on Section 8. And people don't want to get kicked off Section 8. And I never knew that until Ken kind of told me. But people will do it once they have that Section 8 benefit that's helping them pay the rent. They don't want to lose it.
Yeah. And guys, like, there's a lot of ways to have your credit hurt. The number one way is divorce and medical. And so, sometimes people, let's say you're a single mother with 2 or 3 or 4 kids, and all of a sudden you've gone through a divorce, and you've never been the breadwinner, as an example. I can think of a number of examples of that person being on Section 8 in some of our properties. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to rebuild their life. They're not, yes, maybe their credit is bad as a result of whatever circumstances they've had. But, this is supposed to be a temporary way to where people can move to the next step. It's not so black and white. And so that's why I firmly believe that there's a place for Section 8. And there are some very, very, very good Section 8 tenants that I've had in the past. I've also had some bad ones. So don't get me wrong. But, just like I do that aren't on Section 8, so
Yep.
Can be either way.
Yeah, but you do have that guaranteed payment on Section 8.
Right.
So let's jump into the premium questions. Make sure you guys check out our premium. You get access to Ken. We always make sure to answer all of your questions. So Amanda's question, is 60 too old to start investing in real estate? I think this is a good question because a lot of people feel like they're too old to start.
No, gosh, no. I think, I think you're a lot wiser actually at 60 than you certainly are when you're 30. So, it's kind of the same thing. It's how can you generate passive income, on the next stage? Most people are actually working longer, and most people aren't retiring till later. So I actually think 60 is actually pretty young. And, and certainly I know people that started investing in real estate in their 80s. So I don't think 60 is a problem at all.
No, the key is to just start. You're never too old to start. And then I just want to jump back to the Section 8 because we're still getting a lot of comments about that. Lou mentioned he thinks Section 8 should only be for 2 years. So as landlords, we love Section 8. We love the government paying the cost of the housing because you're getting paid as a landlord, no matter where it's coming from.
Yeah, there are some restrictions on Section 8 on how much you can raise your rents and things like that. And I understand all of that. So, you have to look at the whole picture. But, I think you guys are going to start to see a lot more about this. And so if you can figure out a way to cash flow your real estate with a number of Section 8 tenants, then, what you're basically got is you've got the government basically paying all your rent each and every month. You're not having to deal with all the other things that can come, like a pandemic. So,
Yeah.
I can assure you during the pandemic, if you had Section 8 properties, the government still paid your rent. You didn't have delinquencies. And so, there are some advantages to that. You're not going to probably capitalize on the big rent increases if you have Section 8, because there are some restrictions around that. If you screen your tenants correctly, just like we do, you're going to find that there are very good Section 8 tenants, just like, market rate. So I don't, to me, they're just people that are, they need a hand.
Yeah, definitely. And Deb asked a good question. I don't know if you would know this, but how do you know how much Section 8 would pay before deciding if it's a fit? Is there like a housing place you can call?
Yeah, so each area has a maximum amount of rent. So you need to sign up. You get on there as part of the Section 8 approved, and they'll tell you what their max is.
Okay. And then right now we have over 400 people watching and only 80 likes. So hit the damn like button. All right. Don wanted to know from Premium, do you need an LLC for each rental?
So here's the reason that you want an LLC. So I'll let you decide. I have LLCs for each of mine. But if you group things inside of an LLC, all an LLC is a type of an entity for asset protection. So if you have 3 rentals, let's say inside of one LLC, and one of them you get sued from one of them, then they can go after the other 2. If you have one inside of an LLC, then of course they only get the assets inside of that. So this really has to do with your own individual comfort. So I know people that have put 2 or 3 in one, and I know some that have had one for every single asset. And that's what we do, because typically we have a lot of tenants in one of our properties. Like we're buying a new property right now in Austin, Texas. It's 450 units. We'll have a lot of tenants in there. And so there's potentially lots of issues inside of that. And so we'll have it in one single purpose entity, or SPE, and LLC. But I know some people put them in there, a whole bunch in one entity. And sometimes they do that because the filing fees and the legal costs around, obviously, tax returns and all that kind of stuff can start to add up. And I totally get that. But for me, I like to have the asset protection around each and every asset.
Yes, to me, it's worth it. So all of mine are in 3 different ones. Pierce wanted to know where he can get your rents due shirt.
So we have those on the website, kenmcelroy.com, on the merch category. Just go ahead and take a look at those. I think they're kind of fun to have, especially now with this, that, landlords can actually collect. So.
Yeah, exactly. The rent is due, people. So Tahan has a really good question, and it's kind of from the other side. She said, we spend a lot of time talking about bad tenants, but what if you're a tenant with a bad landlord and they're not making repairs, etc.? Yeah. What are your options there?
That's a really good question. So the good part about all the landlord tenant laws in each state is that they are crystal clear with what that necessarily means. And so you have to go into the landlord tenant law in your individual state. But typically, I think different people have different views on what a bad landlord is. And,
that's true. Yeah.
And so if there's some health and safety issues, then of course, you also as a tenant have the option to notice the landlord as well. And so it doesn't just go one way. But if I'm not exactly sure what your issue is, but my suggestion is that obviously moving is, if it is an option for you, that's probably super easy. You're not going to change your landlord. You're not going to change your landlord's behavior, but you do have options as it pertains to the landlord tenant law.
Yeah, and they're different in every state, but I know that, if there's a major issue like your heat is out, your water heater, something that makes it unlivable, then you, I think, have the option to move out, right? And you would have a good argument there.
Yeah. You don't want to just move out. What you want is to take a look. There's some notice periods that you as a landlord or you as a tenant can do to the landlord to put them on notice before you move out. So you don't want to just move out and say, this is why. You want to follow the law, just like the landlord has to do for anything.
Exactly. And Tahan, we're sorry, that is a man and not a woman. It's impossible to tell on here.
Oh, yeah.
From the names. So going back to our premium question, Jamie had a really good question, and I felt like this would pertain to a lot of you. She's looking to buy an Airbnb at a lake house in the Midwest. It can cash flow $2,000 a week in the summer. Where does she begin on if she should purchase it?
Well, I guess if it only produces $2,000 a week in the summer, then what does it do in the winter?
Exactly.
So my biggest issue is, and that's unfortunately, you got to be careful. That's what lures people in, is they start to look at the high costs of, seasonal rentals obviously in the winter, that could be around a ski area. In the summer, it could be around, let's say a lake house. But you're going to own it for 12 months. And so you have to look at all your expenses, including for an Airbnb, the cost to pay Airbnb, the cost to set up an Airbnb, the cost to clean an Airbnb, the furnishings and all the things, So, there's a lot to the Airbnb business, and it's obviously a great business. A lot of people make a lot of money doing it, but it is a bit like running a hotel. So, and so there's definitely some learning that has to happen, and some stress around the vacancy. So don't get lured in the $2,000 a week issue. I think you probably should be taking a look at the vacancies. And so like in Scottsdale, as an example, nobody wants to be in Scottsdale when it's 110 or 115 degrees. But everyone wants to be there basically from about October through February. So we have a pretty big vacancy in the Airbnb category from probably about April through August, September. And so, you have to calculate that, and you can do $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a month in the winter, and you might be barely covering or even negative in the summer. So you have to look at the whole picture before you can actually decide if you want to buy.
When I remember at our lake house, when we had that at Coeur d'Alene, we weren't there all winter, and then the pipes would freeze and things would burst, and we'd come back to issues every single, time it was used then again in the summer. So you also have to think about that.
Yeah.
Those are some major repairs.
Yeah, that's the other piece, is if there's no one there, you have your insurance, you have your mortgage, you have your property taxes, you have utilities, and then you have somebody looking at it. I know that we had somebody going to the house every single week.
Yep,
to
paying
make
for
sure,
that.
Yeah, that it wasn't occupied. And then even when it was occupied, you have stuff happen. So there's a bunch of things that can happen year round. And maybe in your particular case, it's full year round, which is great. There are plenty of places that are full year round. But even great areas like where we are right now in Manhattan Beach, there's not a lot of people here over the winter.
Exactly. So I want to wrap this up. It was awesome chatting with you guys. I have a few things. Make sure if you're working on the budget, it's kenmcelroy.com/expenses. And that's going to help you guys, work on your budget, work on saving money for your down payment. Ken spent a lot of time putting this together. So make sure to check it out, and we will see you guys next week. And
All
ladies.
right. Cheers, everyone.